"What are you talking about?" Melody said, still cradling Talion. "What unexpected reaction? How in the world could Talion have done that to you?" Silas pulled out a chair, sitting on it quite hard, as if his legs could barely carry him. "Ugh. I mean, I've been through this process before, but damn. This would have been so much easier if I didn't have to make sure that the kid wasn't gonna die. Well, I'll try to explain this the best I can. As far as an unusual reaction goes, whether it's because of Talion's dragon blood, or because of the level of his parents combined with it, when Talion reached that critical point, the knowledge that he was going to die, even if it was a lie, it turns out that dragons, or maybe just Talion, don't respond in the same way that others do. Instead, it wakes something up." "What do you mean, wakes something up?" "Basically, as far as what I at least believe that was, what I think is that it was nothing more than pure draconic instinct. In the moment when he believed that he was going to die, that there was no way out, his draconic instincts took full control. He didn't know what to do, so instead of giving in, his draconic instincts took control. In essence, I was fighting a dragon in true form, and unlike Talion, his draconic instincts, at full bore, with no regular human thought or emotions muddying the water, is an extremely dangerous thing. And not only that, it seems to have full access to all of his demonic ability, even without any training. That alone should have been enough. Even mid-level demons would probably go down to an enemy like that. But Talion had one more trick to pull out of his bag. It appears that the combination between a dragon and a succubus created a very interesting result. You see, both dragons and succubuses have very powerful natural abilities. One of a dragon's most powerful abilities is their ability to absorb magical energy of basically any sort. This is something that they do ambiently, basically by either eating a creature that has that type of magical energy, or being in an area where there's simply a lot of it floating around ambiently, attached to nothing. They, over time, can absorb and incorporate that energy into their being. And this is one of the great assets that dragons have, and why they're so prolific and basically everywhere. There's basically nowhere that you can go where you're not going to find a dragon. And that's why. They can adapt to anything by absorbing the ambient energy, gain the ability to survive in a place that's basically nothing but water, by absorbing the elemental energy that water possesses, becoming capable of living without breathing, of surviving the harshest cold, the most intense heat. It's how the different forms of dragon come into being, one of their great survival tools. But this process usually takes a lot of time to do. It's a process. It's not like they can just drink some water and suddenly they can breathe under it. It takes a very long time to adapt to situations. Dragons are able to drastically decrease that timeline and adapt to things much more quickly than any other race could. But it still does take time. And then there's succubus. The succubus is known for one of their most terrifying abilities, one known as soul consumption. This ability is an especially nasty one that all succubuses possess. Basically, a succubus can swallow your soul, devour your very essence, suck it right out of your body, and gulp it down. There are, of course, standards, measures for when they can and can't do it. The first measure being that they have to be stronger than you by a good measure, In other words, if they're twice your strength or greater, then it basically doesn't require any effort at all to simply suck the soul right out of your body, and that's the end of you. From that point on, your body's just an empty shell. No consciousness or mind, it's just meat with nothing else to it. To be devoured by a succubus is to simply cease to be. They swallow your essence, consuming you into themselves, and it only makes them stronger. A succubus can also swallow your soul if they manage to weaken you enough. In other words, if you come into conflict with one, and you're basically at death's door, if they've weakened you enough so that you can't really fight anymore, your will to fight has gone, then they can swallow you down, devour your soul, and with it, the strength of your soul becomes theirs. There are other aspects that I'm not going to bother getting into, but suffice it to say that young Talion appears to have inherited both abilities from his parents. Listen closely, these individual abilities are powerful by themselves, terrifying even, but they have their limitations. For example, succubuses can't just absorb any kind of energy. It's specifically spiritual energy. They devour the energy of your soul, and that's it. Dragons, on the other hand, can absorb just about any kind of energy, regardless of what it is. However, they don't simply sap it all. Can't simply absorb all of the energy that you possess anytime they feel like it. They absorb levels of ambient energy that exist randomly around. They just do it much more effectively than anyone else. Much, much more effectively. But the combination of both the succubus's most powerful ability and one of the dragon's most powerful abilities seem to have somehow merged in Talion. I don't know whether he still has the individual abilities themselves, but Talion seems to be able to use some sort of combination, a fusion between the two. I quite frankly haven't picked a name for it yet. But basically, Talion can rapidly absorb any kind of energy, swallow it down, make it part of himself in an instant, taking your own power and using it against you immediately. Quite frankly, it's the most terrible goddamn thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, seriously, if Talion actually knew what the hell he was doing, if he actually had the full-scale power and ability of an adult demon with training, then I'd have been a dead man, regardless of how much power I used. And trust me, I was holding back. It's insane. Most demons have limitations based on how powerful they are. No matter how strong a demon is, eventually they will run out of juice and have to either retreat in order to recharge or hope they can best you with what they have. But there's always a limit. Talion doesn't have one. He's able to instantaneously absorb ambient energy of any kind, in any form. If you produce an attack using demonic energy, he can just eat it. And the moment he does, it just recharges his freaking batteries. And not only that, but he can actually start to use your abilities. He doesn't have mastery of it, not by a long shot. But the speed at which he actually starts learning to use them, their effects, and how to best apply them, well, at least in his draconic form, is quite frankly terrifying. An enemy that can't be exhausted, that never runs out of power, so long as they can feed on yours. That's a terrifying concept, by anyone's standard and by any measure you can think of. That kid, he's gonna be freaking unstoppable. Once I finish training him, of course. I can tell you with absolute certainty at this point, one day, very soon, maybe not today or tomorrow or next week, but soon enough, there isn't going to be a single person in the demon world who does not fear Talion.